Hello to everyone. In this presentation, we are going to study the most important metabolic disorder, diabetes mellitus. The word diabetes mellitus is derived from the Greek words di, which means through, ben in means to go, and diabetes literally means pass through. Why this word diabetes is given to this disorder? Because this disease causes loss of weight, as if the body mass is passed through the urine. And the Greek word mellitus means sweet. In this disorder, there is increase in blood glucose level and later on excretion of glucose in the urine, and this glucose is sweet in nature. That's why the word mellitus is given to this disorder. In this disorder, there is absolute or relative deficiency of insulin hormone, and this disorder affects 10% of the total population. This disorder is the major cause for morbidity and mortality. It is the most common clinical condition and developed due to increased blood glucose level. In spite of increase in blood glucose level, the entry of glucose into the cell is inefficient and all cells are starved for glucose. What is the diagnostic criteria for diabetes mellitus? WHO has given a diagnostic criteria, and according to this criteria, if person's fasting blood glucose level is more than 126 mg per deciliter and 2 hours after food, if the blood glucose level is more than 200 mg per deciliter, that person is considered to be suffering from diabetes mellitus. The disease is classified by WHO according to recommendations given in 1999 into type 1 diabetes mellitus, that is insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, type 2 diabetes mellitus, that is non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. Apart from this, there are certain conditions which are considered as a pre-diabetic or diabetes prone states, which include gestational diabetes mellitus, impaired glucose tolerance and impaired fasting glycemia. And fourth one, diabetes secondary to other known causes. These causes are Cushing syndrome, thyrotoxicosis. These are endocrinal disorders, and side effects of certain drugs like steroids, beta blocker on long-term use may lead to development of diabetes mellitus. Infection of the pancreas, which is seen in chronic pancreatitis, may lead to development of diabetes mellitus, and hemochromatosis, which is developed due to toxicity of iron, which causes deposition of iron in the pancreas and its fibrosis that leads to development of diabetes mellitus. So these are the causes which may lead to development of diabetes mellitus. First, we'll discuss type 1 diabetes mellitus, which is also known as insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. This disorder is developed due to decreased insulin production. Circulating concentration of insulin in the blood is very low, and 10% of total diabetic patients belong to type 1 diabetes mellitus. These patients are dependent upon insulin injections because insulin concentration in the blood is very low. Onset is below 30 years of age, and most commonly affected age group is adolescent age group. An autoimmune basis is seen in most of the cases. Circulating antibodies against insulin is seen in some cases, whereas antibodies against islet cell cytoplasmic proteins are seen in 80% of the cases. And the most common complication of type 1 diabetes mellitus is ketosis. They are prone to develop ketosis. Type 2 diabetes mellitus. 95% of the total diabetic patients belong to type 2 diabetes mellitus. This disease is developed due to decreased biological response to insulin, which is also called insulin resistance. So, in this disorder, there is relative insulin deficiency. Here, the circulating level of insulin is normal or mildly elevated or slightly decreased, depending on the stage of the disease. Type 2 diabetes mellitus is commonly seen in individuals above 30 years of age group. This disease, patients are less prone to develop ketosis, and about 60% of the patients of type 2 diabetes mellitus are obese. These patients are having high plasma insulin levels. Some of the risk factors associated with type 2 diabetes mellitus are age, obesity, alcohol, diet, family history and lack of physical activity. This table shows comparison of some of the important characteristic features of type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Most of the points we already discussed, some we'll discuss it here. In genetic predisposition, type 1 diabetes mellitus is having mild or moderate genetic predisposition or family history, whereas type 2 diabetes mellitus is having very strong genetic predisposition. Acute complication of type 1 diabetes mellitus is ketoacidosis, whereas hyperosmolar coma is the most important acute complication in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Oral hypoglycemic drugs are not useful for treatment point of view in type 1 diabetes mellitus, whereas they are the main line of treatment in case of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Administration of insulin is required for type 1 diabetes mellitus, whereas it is usually not necessary in type 2 diabetes mellitus because insulin is already there in normal concentration or increased concentration. So there is no requirement of insulin in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Metabolic derangements in diabetes mellitus. Metabolic derangements are mainly seen because of decreased concentration of insulin or resistance to the action of insulin hormone. Because of that, there leads to derangements in carbohydrate metabolism, protein metabolism and lipid metabolism. First we'll see carbohydrate metabolism derangements. Insulin deficiency leads to decreased uptake of glucose by the cell. The enzymes of carbohydrate metabolism which are dependent on insulin are less active because of insulin deficiency or its resistance. Net effect is decreased utilization of glucose, inhibition of glycolysis and stimulation of gluconeogenesis. All these phenomena leads to hyperglycemia. Derangements in fat metabolism. Because of lack of insulin hormone activity, anti-lipolytic effect of insulin is not there. As insulin is not there, fat undergo breakdown that leads to high free fatty acid levels in the plasma, which later on get deposited in the liver and develop fatty liver. As there is more free fatty acid level, these fatty acids undergo beta oxidation and form acetyl coenzyme A. This acetyl coenzyme A cannot be efficiently oxidized through TCA cycle because availability of oxaloacetate is limited. Why availability of oxaloacetate is limited? Because there is excessive gluconeogenesis because of lack of insulin hormone. Excessive gluconeogenesis is responsible for depletion of oxaloacetate. So acetyl coenzyme is diverted to ketone body formation pathway and leads to ketogenesis. This tendency is commonly seen in type 1 diabetes mellitus. Acetyl coenzyme A along with ketogenesis, it is also diverted to cholesterol formation. So there is increased cholesterol level in the blood. In diabetes mellitus, there is hyperlipidemia, especially increase in non-essential fatty acids, triacylglycerol and cholesterol. Derangements in protein metabolism. Because of lack of insulin hormone activity, anabolic effect of insulin hormone action on protein metabolism is not seen. So there leads to increased breakdown of protein which are responsible for providing amino acids. These amino acids are substrate for gluconeogenesis. So increased breakdown of protein is responsible for muscle wasting. Muscle wasting is common feature in diabetes mellitus. Summary of metabolic events in diabetes mellitus is seen here. In diabetes mellitus, there is decreased insulin hormone or resistance to the action of insulin hormone. Because of that, there is decreased glucose uptake by extrahepatic tissues. In muscle, protein undergoes breakdown and leads to excessive formation of amino acids. These amino acids are utilized in gluconeogenic pathway. There is increased gluconeogenesis along with increased glycogenolysis. Both gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis are responsible for increased glucose production. Decreased utilization of glucose because of defective uptake of glucose by tissues and increased glucose production both are responsible for increased blood glucose level, that is hyperglycemia. Because of decreased insulin hormone, there is increased lipolysis, which is responsible for the formation of plasma free fatty acids in more quantity. These plasma free fatty acids are diverted to ketone body formation and that leads to ketoacidosis. Plasma free fatty acids when present in excess are diverted to triglycerol synthesis also, and triglycerol level in the blood is increased, and this condition is called hypertriglyceridemia. Clinical presentation of diabetes mellitus. First we'll see the cardinal symptom. What do you mean by cardinal symptoms? Cardinal symptom means chief complaint or major complaint. It is not related with heart at all. It is just the major or chief or the characteristic features of diabetes mellitus. When the blood glucose level in diabetes mellitus exceeds the level of renal threshold glucose value. What is renal threshold glucose value? It is 1 HA milligram per deciliter. So what it means, when the blood glucose exceeds above 1 HA milligram per deciliter, glucose is excreted in urine, and this condition is called glucosuria. Due to osmotic effect of glucose, more water comes in urine, and this leads to excessive formation of urine, so which is called polyuria. Polyuria is the first cardinal symptom of diabetes mellitus. To compensate for this loss of water in urine, third center in the medulla is activated and more water is taken up. This condition is called polydipsia, which is the second cardinal symptom of diabetes mellitus. To compensate for the loss of glucose and protein, the patient will take more food because of stimulation of hunger center in the medulla, and this condition is called polyphagia, which is the third cardinal symptoms of diabetes mellitus. So there are total 3 cardinal symptoms: polyuria, polydipsia and polyphagia. The loss and ineffective utilization of glucose leads to breakdown of fat and protein, and this would lead to loss of weight. So loss of weight is also common presentation in diabetes mellitus. What is the pathophysiology behind the cardinal symptom? As blood sugar level becomes elevated, which is called hyperglycemia, when it crosses renal threshold value, glucose comes in renal filtrate and excreted in the urine. As glucose comes in urine, this glucose is having osmotic effect. It requires more water to get excreted through the urine, so it withdraws water from the renal tubular cell and excessive volume of urine is formed. That leads to polyuria. As there is excessive loss of water in the urine, there is dehydration, and this dehydration stimulates thirst center in the medulla. That leads to excessive drinking of water, which is called polydipsia. And since there is defective uptake of glucose by the cells because of lack of insulin hormone, cells are not getting glucose even though glucose is present in high concentration in the blood. So stimulus is sent to the hunger center in the brain to have more food. So patient will experience more hunger and eat more. This condition is called polyphagia. Paradoxically, the diabetic patient often lose weight since the cells are unable to take up the glucose. Diabetes mellitus patients commonly suffer from chronic recurrent infections such as boil abscesses. That's why any person with a recurrent infection should be investigated for diabetes mellitus. Why chronic recurrent infections are commonly seen in diabetes mellitus? Because when the blood glucose level in extracellular fluid is increased, bacteria get good nutrition for their multiplication. At the same time, macrophage function in the host is insufficient due to lack of efficient utilization of glucose. Now we'll discuss complications of diabetes mellitus, which are of 2 types, acute and chronic. First, we'll discuss acute complication, which include diabetic ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis is more commonly associated with type 1 diabetes mellitus. In this diabetes, oxaloacetate is diverted to gluconeogenesis. So TCA cycle cannot utilize all the acetyl coenzyme A. So more acetyl coenzyme A is now diverted to ketone body formation pathway, and more ketone bodies are formed. So these ketone bodies accumulate in the blood, which is called ketonemia, and excretion of ketone bodies in urine is called ketonuria. The presence of ketone bodies in urine can be detected by Rothera's test. What are the ketone bodies? Acetone, acetoacetic acid, and beta hydroxybutyric acid. Accumulation of ketone bodies in plasma leads to decrease in blood pH. So This is called acidosis. It is developed due to accumulation of ketone bodies, so it is called metabolic ketoacidosis. As this condition is seen in diabetes, it is also called diabetic ketoacidosis. There is smell of acetone in breath. The typical breathing is called Kussmaul's respiration. It is due to compensatory hyperventilation. If not treated promptly, the condition may be fatal. Mainstay of treatment of diabetic ketoacidosis are parenteral administration of insulin and glucose by intravenous route to control diabetes mellitus. Second, intravenous administration of injection potassium chloride and bicarbonate. Why potassium chloride injection is given? Because when insulin is given for the treatment purpose, this insulin causes entry of potassium from outside to intracellular compartment. So there is decreased potassium in extracellular compartment that leads to hypokalemia. To prevent hypokalemia, we should give intravenous potassium chloride injection. Third treatment is correction of water and electrolyte balance, and fourth is treatment of precipitating cause. Second complication is hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma. This complication is commonly associated with type 2 diabetes mellitus. This complication is developed due to highly elevated levels of glucose in the blood. Glucose, being osmolectically active, is responsible for increase in osmolality of extracellular fluid. Because of that, leads to osmotic diuresis. So water and electrolytes are getting excreted in urine in more volume, and there leads to water and electrolyte depletion in the body. The coma, which is seen in this complication, results from dehydration of cerebral cells due to hypertonicity of the extracellular compartment. Now we'll see chronic complications of diabetes mellitus. First, we'll see vascular diseases. Atherosclerotic plaque formation in diabetes mellitus is seen due to altered lipid profile values. Lipid levels in the blood are increased, so that leads to atherosclerosis and later on plaque formation, which subsequently develop intravascular thrombosis. So it may lead to paralysis if cerebral vessels are blocked. It may develop myocardial infarction if coronary arteries are blocked. If the blocks are seen in small vessel, the process is called microangiopathy, which may lead to diabetic retinopathy and diabetic neuropathy. Complications in eyes. Early development of cataract in lens is seen in diabetes mellitus due to increased rate of sorbitol formation caused by hyperglycemia. Retinal microangiopathies can lead to retinopathies and blindness. Neuropathy is commonly seen in diabetic mellitic patient. Peripheral neuropathies with paresthesia is very common. Decreased glucose utilization and its diversion to sorbitol formation in Schwann cells may be the cause of neuropathy. Neuropathy may lead to risk of foot ulcer and gangrene. Diabetic nephropathy is one of the most important chronic complications of diabetes mellitus. In diabetic nephropathy, kidney is damaged and kidney functions are disturbed. Microalbuminuria is the first sign of kidney involvement. Severe cases may lead to renal failure. Now we'll discuss laboratory investigations for diabetes mellitus. Most commonly required investigation is estimation of blood sugar level or blood glucose value. For monitoring a diabetic patient, periodic check of fasting and postprandial sugar is necessary, and it should be done once in 3 months. Second important investigation is lipid profile. In diabetes mellitus, there is derangement of lipid values, so lipid investigation is done to assess the progress of diabetes mellitus. In diabetes mellitus, as there may be involvement of kidney, so to assess the kidney functions, 2 tests are commonly done: blood urea and serum creatinine. Fourth investigation is microalbuminuria and frank albuminuria. In this investigation, presence of albumin 50 to 300 milligram per day in urine is known as microalbuminuria. Microalbuminuria is an indicator of progressive renal damage. If the albumin excretion exceeds more than 300 milligram per day, it indicates overt diabetic nephropathy. Fifth investigation is glycated hemoglobin. It is the best index of long-term control of glucose, and it is done by measurement of glycated hemoglobin or glycosylated hemoglobin. Enzymatic addition of glucose is known as glycosylation, while non-enzymatic addition of glucose to the hemoglobin is known as glycation. When there is hyperglycemia, the proteins may undergo glycation. Glucose forms skip base with N-terminal amino group of protein. When once attached, glucose is not removed from the hemoglobin. Therefore, it remains throughout the lifespan of RBC, that is 1 to. The glycated hemoglobins are together called HbA1 fraction. Out of this, 80% molecules are HbA1c, where glucose is attached to the N-terminal valine of beta chain of hemoglobin. That's why HbA1c term is commonly used for glycosylated hemoglobin. Interpretation of glycosylated hemoglobin values. Glycosylated hemoglobin is important for prognostic purpose, to see the response to treatment, not for diagnosis of diabetes mellitus. The normal value of glycosylated hemoglobin is 4 to 7%, but in diabetic patient, this value is increased up to 8 to 15%. HbA1c value indicates the mean glucose level over previous 10 to 12x. It is unaffected by recent changes in blood sugar level. An elevated HbA1c indicates poor control of diabetes mellitus. The risk of long-term complication is proportionately increased if HbA1c value is increased. So, if suppose a physician advises hypoglycemic drug or insulin injection to a diabetic patient and he wants to assess whether the person is responding to the treatment or not, whether his glucose level is under control or not, in that case, glycosylated hemoglobin investigation is advised. If glycosylated hemoglobin is done after 3 months of treatment, and if this value is under normal, we can say patient is responding to the treatment. So glycosylated hemoglobin is important for prognostic purpose or to see the response to the treatment. So this investigation should be done at least every 3 months in all patients on treatment. Glycosylated hemoglobin values below 7% indicates adequate control of diabetic state. Management of diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is managed first through diet and exercise. This is the first line of treatment. A diabetic patient is advised to have balanced diet with high protein content, low calories, devoid of refined sugar, low saturated fat, adequate polyunsaturated fats, low cholesterol, and sufficient quantity of fiber. This diet should be supported by adequate physical activity, that is exercise. So diet and exercise is the first line of treatment in management of diabetes. Second line of treatment consists of oral hypoglycemic drugs or insulin injection. Oral hypoglycemic drugs are given to patients of type 2 diabetes mellitus, whereas insulin injections are given to type 1 diabetes mellitus. And fourth one is prevention of complications of diabetes mellitus by its early detection. Now we'll see one syndrome associated with diabetes mellitus disorder. This syndrome is called metabolic syndrome, and it is characterized by abdominal obesity, hypertriglyceridemia, and low HDL cholesterol, elevated blood pressure, and fourth, most important, insulin resistance or decreased glucose tolerance. The body cannot use glucose properly even in the presence of normal insulin level. In other words, body cannot utilize glucose efficiently. So this metabolic syndrome is also called as insulin resistance syndrome. In this syndrome, patients with metabolic syndrome are at increased risk of developing coronary heart disease and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Some people are genetically predisposed to insulin resistance. Acquired factors like obesity and physical inactivity can elicit insulin resistance in these people. So most people with type 2 diabetes mellitus have abdominal obesity. You can see here the characteristic features of insulin resistance syndrome or metabolic syndrome here. In the center you can see insulin resistance is there. Because of that leads to decreased glucose tolerance, dyslipidemia, which consists of high triglyceride and low HDL. HDL is good for heart, but its level is low. Then cardiovascular disease risk is more, obesity is associated with insulin resistance syndrome, polycystic ovarian syndrome is also commonly found in metabolic syndrome, and hypertension, that is increased blood pressure. Diagnosis of metabolic syndrome. How will you diagnose metabolic syndrome? Number one, elevated waist circumference to assess obesity. For men, it is equal to or greater than 40 inches, and for women, it is equal to or greater than 35 inches. Second, elevated triglyceride equal to or greater than 150 milligram per deciliter. Reduced HDL cholesterol in the blood, for men less than 40 milligram per deciliter, and for women less than 50 milligram per deciliter. Elevated blood pressure equal to or greater than 130 by 85 millimeter of Hg. Elevated fasting glucose equal to or greater than 100 milligram per deciliter. So you can diagnose metabolic syndrome if all these investigations or all these factors are elevated. How will you manage metabolic syndrome? Patients are advised to lose weight to achieve desirable weight. Patients are advised to do moderate exercise every day. Third, reduced intake of saturated fats, fatty acids and cholesterol in the diet is advised.